wonderful new book, God is Good for You, is available now, and its author is with me today across our Melbourne Catholic social channels. Greg Sheridan, welcome.
Great to be with you, Shane, on God's glorious day.
It is a magnificent day, and I must say congratulations on a really excellent book. I just wanted to explore, if you like, a number of the facets of the book, and even just its title, God is Good for You. In an era in the West where Christianity and belief in God and involvement in religion is on the wane, seemingly, what's made you write a book like this?
Well, Shane, part of it was, I wrote a book 3 years ago, went to a lot of writers' festivals and found there was not a single book arguing the case for Christianity or just positive about Christianity. And I think God is true, and that's the most important story. Journalists are always looking for good material, you know.
Sure.
And Christianity in Australia is a great story. And I wanted to write a book from first principles. Why do we believe in God? Is it rational to believe in God? What has Christianity meant through history? And then what are Christians doing in Australia today? So I thought that there was just a huge yawning chasm where that was, where that space was, and you know, I could put my little tiny spoonful of contribution to the vast ocean of human discourse.
Well, talking about a little spoonful, we might just get a little spoonful of a few of the main things you talk about in the book. And as I read through it, the first thing that I came across, and that's what readers will find when they open this excellent book, is a whole discourse on the death of God. It's a pretty strong comment. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Shane, in the West, by which I mean Western Europe, Australia and New Zealand and North America,
yeah,
belief is falling over a cliff. And it's a very optimistic book, but we've got to squarely face the facts. It's a very eccentric place for the West to go. The vast majority of the rest of the world is on fire with religion, and the vast majority of human beings who have ever lived in history believed in God. But Britain is already an atheist, majority atheist society. Last census showed us Australia was about 50% Christian, but that is predominantly in older or disproportionately in older age groups. And the same trends are evident in the United States, although it starts from a higher level of religious belief.
Right.
So the ambient culture is abandoning God. I think that's going to be disturbing for humanity. I think if we lose God, we lose something fundamental to our humanity.
Someone said to me recently that it's an interesting correlation, I don't know if you've thought about this, that as mental health issues are rising in the West, belief in God seems to be falling. Do you think there is some connection there, that people are finding life a bit tougher because there is nothing beyond their own selves to hold on to?
Yeah, I think that's right, Shane, and it makes sense, and it's also supported by the sociological evidence. It's very disturbing for sociologists, most of whom don't have any religious faith really, that the happiest people in the world are the people who have religious belief and attend a church or a temple or a synagogue once a week or more. And the evidence for this is just overwhelming. But on top of this, when you think of things, humanity needs a purpose. Viktor Frankl, who survived Hitler's death camps, writes beautifully about this.
Yes.
Human beings need meaning. They need meaning in their life. They need a transcendent purpose. And when you remove God, you remove transcendent purpose, there's both a boredom and a panic which sets into the human condition. What are we for? And also, there's no sense of common sense or limitation. We lose touch with the best things in our DNA, really.
You talk a little about Evelyn Waugh and Graham Greene and some of the great authors of well, you'd call them modern times. Is there much great writing that you would say latch onto around the whole subject of religion in modern times?
Well, that's a really interesting thing, Shane. So 50 or 60 years ago, popular culture was dominated by Christianity. Hollywood, the novels we all read, War and Green and so on.
I think you mentioned The Cardinal in the book.
Cardinal, Henry Morton Robinson's
yeah.
great book. Reading that book led me into spending a year in a seminary thinking I might be a priest, but Thomas Merton's memoirs, and so on. Now, I'm not arguing in favour of the past. The past is a different country, its own demons and all that.
Fair call.
But popular culture now and elite culture are either hostile to Christianity or simply completely ignore it. Now, there are great Christian books, certainly, but they're generally not invited into the mainstream culture. I read in the preparation of this book great books by Ross Douthat from the New York Times, Bad Religion and To Change the Church. N.T. Wright's fabulous book on the resurrection, A.N. Wilson's book on the Bible, Roger Scruton's wonderful book, The Soul of the World. But they're kind of niche, they're for specialists. They're not, you don't really see them on the main ABC talk programs and so on. It's as if Christianity is just being whited out of the culture.
Well, as it's whited out, this concept of atheism is becoming a bit trendy and stronger. You talk about atheism quite a little bit in the book. What's your general view about atheism as a concept?
Well, I think atheism really is a religious faith, and you need much more magical thinking to be an atheist than you do to believe in God. So most human beings have always believed in God. To believe in atheism, you have to believe that this incredibly improbable 1 in 100 billion sort of universe came about by chance, and often to deal with that improbability, atheists resort to very strange formulations like saying there must be an infinite number of universes and we just lucked into the one that's good for life. So you can't believe in God, but you can make up an infinite number of universes.
That's an incredibly interesting explanation.
Well, that's a thanks. So in the chapter about belief is rational, though, I wanted to put the positive reasons for believing in God and just leave the answers to the new atheists to the end of the chapter, because I think as Christians it's a mistake for us to advance our case predominantly as a negative, that they're wrong. And the positive case for belief in Christianity, well, again, Roger Scruton argues that the most important piece of evidence is the long human experience of God. But there are a million other rational ways to God as well. For example, all of our strong desires imply the existence of a reality. You're hungry, that implies food. You're tired, that implies sleep. You're lonely, that implies friendship. And the yearning for God implies God. And then, as I say, the sheer improbability of life, of the universe, and so on. It's a universe sort of made to order. It's the Goldilocks universe. Then we have this tremendous instinct of right and wrong. Every human being does. It seems to come from outside of us. We have an instinct that the people we love are going to live on. I think there are 1,000 different ways you can get to God rationally, although in the end you don't believe because of reason, but you want your belief to be consistent with reason.
We're talking to Greg Sheridan, author. The book is God is Good for You. It's an excellent read and I do recommend it. You're listening to Greg on our Melbourne Catholic podcast or viewing Greg here on our Melbourne Catholic social channels. Hope you're enjoying our chat. We've got a bit more to cover yet. Thomas Aquinas gets a run. I hoped he would, because I studied Thomas Aquinas way back when I was younger, and it always really impressed me, even though I didn't have his scientific brain. But he, under that rational banner, gets a run in your book.
Well, there's a whole chapter on the Middle Ages, because sadly we've sort of banished historical education from our school and university curriculum. But insofar as there is any Disneyland version of history, it's that the first Christians were good, but then they became the state religion of Rome, and then you got the Dark Ages, which went for 1,000 years, and nothing good happened. It was all superstition and priestly rule. In fact, the Middle Ages really created everything we like about modernity. And certainly Thomas Aquinas was a critical player in this. Everything that we love in our modern political system grows directly out of Christianity and the Christian debates of the early Christians and the Christians of the Middle Ages. For example, human rights comes from the idea that every human being is defined by their personal relationship with an immortal God.
Yes.
And that every human being has an immortal soul, and that this covered in the ancient world and medieval world women, slaves, foreigners. In other words, all categories of human beings which used to be abused by masters and powerful men suddenly had rights. The very idea of feminism, it was the Christian determination that marriage should be an institution of mutual love and consent and reciprocal love, which was much better for women than anything that had gone before, much better than the lordly behaviour of men towards women before. Thomas Aquinas, I juxtapose a passage of his next to a passage of Darwin. He understood very early on that Genesis teaches us that God created the world. It doesn't teach us how he did it, and that the normal laws and patterns of nature would continue and would produce change. So he almost anticipated by hundreds of years the theory of evolution. It's an incredibly rich area of history. We developed, for example, the scientific method, which no other civilization did. All civilizations are wonderful, but this is something Western civilization did. But this emerged directly out of Christian doctrine. The doctrine that the natural world was created by God and therefore reflected something of the order of God. And at the same time, the natural world wasn't divine itself. It wasn't full of capricious spirits or deities that you had to, keep at bay. So discovering the order of the created world was part of discovering the order of God's life. And this really led to experimental science, which is the most important technological revolution probably in the history of humanity. This all emerged directly out of Christian consciousness and very directly, I think, from the reflections on the Gospels.
So you talked about the Dark Ages, and a question just popped into my mind. I wasn't going to ask you this, but do you think horribly we might be heading for another period of the Dark Ages?
It's very hard to know where we're going at the moment. It's a very peculiar historical moment. So Shane, I'm an Irishman, and I suspect you might have some of that background.
Yes, fair call.
So while I describe the situation as fairly disturbing, I don't think it's altogether serious. That is to say, there are lots of reasons for optimism. There's the new Christian movements which are doing superbly well. There's also the fact that man is always searching for God and rebelling against God at the same time. And God has a way of reaching into the human heart and bringing people back. The individual Christians that I interview in the second half of the book. So a lot of these new Christian movements are very dynamic. They're dealing with the cultural dislocation we're facing. They're reaching out. There's a lot of energy in young Christians. In the book I visit a new Benedictine monastery in Tasmania. When I visited it had 4 new recruits. Now I think has 11.
Wow.
There's 11 people devoting themselves to a life of contemplative prayer. There's a magnificent Campion College in Western Sydney. There's the lovely Focolare movement. I interviewed the leader of in Melbourne. Focolare means fireside. It's a group of predominantly lay Christians.
And that gets a good run here in the book.
Yeah, and they're trying to live in the spirit of the gospel. And they're an interesting group because they're about equally comprised of men and women. But under the constitution approved by Pope John Paul II, they are always to be led by a woman. So they're emphasising the Marian profile in the church to balance the Petrarch.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Shane.
It's an excellent book. Greg Sheridan of the Australian newspaper. The book is God is Good to You. I don't think you'll find it too easy to find in the bookshops. And I think you'll find it, I must say, a very, very good read. We hope you'll join us again for another Melbourne Catholic podcast. It'll have to be good to be as enjoyable as what this chat has been. But keep looking for us and finding us on the Melbourne Catholic social